Moving on to 17, the CalPERS Unfunded Liability Committee recommendations. We have, as folks may know, we had a series of meetings last year, and thank you in advance thank you all again to Terrell for all the work she did. I don't believe anybody else is in the room right now, but it takes a lot of work and organization to put that together, so it's much appreciated. So that came about as a series of recommendations that the intent is to put together and draft in letter format, and hopefully at least make an attempt to get other local municipalities to agree with us and sign on, so we can give that letter to send down south to a point yet to be determined. But I would like, if you wouldn't mind elaborating a little bit, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, and there's several in the room here that went through the 6-month journey with us. We explored all possibilities, and just as we said, Mr. Trainer, we said we were bringing this back in February to come before the council because we needed council's endorsement behind this. Do you have the presentation from November 21st? Perfect. I can walk through this very, very quickly because this was a summation. I'm going to take a 30-minute presentation and turn it to about 2.5. Oh, you can click right through it. It's fine. Appreciate it, Terrell. I'll go click. There we go. We covered everything starting August 15th. We had various guests. Click. This is working. We had League of California Cities. We had CalPERS. We had numerous experts here. Click. November 21st is where we came together to talk about what we might do, and then December 19th, we summed it up. So click. We made sure all the material was out on the websites. There was a big, huge, thick binder. All the videos from all the processes we went through are still out there, so anyone could watch them, and we wanted to make sure that everyone was well informed. We had city employees, we had members of the public, members of the council. It was a collaborative effort. Click and click. There we go. And you can find all this, again, back at our Yuba City, City of Yuba City website. Click, go on through, keep going. There we go. Our unfunded liability, these are the last numbers at that point that we had. Our unfunded liability right now is roughly about $79 million. It is indicative, and it fluctuates based upon the returns from the PERS investments, and we have no control over that. Click forward, please. We talked about options that came out: taking action against CalPERS, require more from employees, pull out of CalPERS, assemble a unified group. I can tell you now, pulling out of CalPERS was not an option because we made a promise to all the retirees, and it would take over $400 million to do that. If we did not pay the $400+ million into that, then the retirees would take a personal hit in their retirement. We made a promise, people. We decided we need to keep the promise, and that's the recommendation that came forward. So that also goes forward with filing bankruptcy and everything else. It's just not viable options. This was a projected path. We can kind of roll through. Shows our rising cost. You can see that our interest was a little over $5 million, and we made a payment of 5.3. We can click forward. I kind of want to get to the stop. Those are the two numbers of what it would take out of our funds in order to walk away from CalPERS. You can see that that is not an option. We can keep going forward. Action to date, we've been making extra payments from our pension stabilization trust fund. That saved us several $100,000s a year. Instead of making monthly payments, we make annual payments up front to save the interest like would be charged on a home mortgage or something every month. We paid it up front. There is no more interest for that year. And, PERS impacts we always take that into consideration, as do the unions, every time we have sat down and had contract negotiations, which was very important for the public to understand that our team is very, very conscientious of the impact. That's why you see things like ongoing 1% tonight plus a one-time stipend, because the ongoing is PERSable, but the one time when it's combined with it is not. So it makes a huge difference. Let's keep going. And let's just keep going to, I think, about the end. Keep going one more. That talks about all the things we have. Let's go to the final one, possibly. Back up one. I can summarize it. Basically, where we're at is, and we've heard this through the current season because, as you know, it's election season out there, and I've been to several of the forums with Sutter County, and they all talk about take the fight to Sacramento. Well, what in the bloody heck are we going to ask Sacramento to do? We're just going to say, hey, fix PERS? We had to have some real ideas. Some of the things that came out that we want to write this letter about and get others to join us is the first thing has to do with the PERS board. The PERS board is supposed to have a fiduciary responsibility to do what's in the best interest of the stakeholders who are the annuitants under PERS. The problem is our current PERS board, 2/3 of that board is appointed, not elected, by our governor. The governor turns around, and this is where the games get kind of funky, turns around and writes an executive order that says PERS will divest itself from oil. And then he turns and says, but the PERS board doesn't have to follow my recommendation. Well, wait a minute, you appointed 2/3 of them and gave them a job, and you're going to say do this. So it starts causing a conflict of interest. So that was one idea, is to let's take a harsh look at how the fiduciary board at PERS is elected or appointed, because they truly have a fiduciary responsibility. And with my expertise in the financial realm, the Securities and Exchange Commission, FINRA, adopted Reg BI, which stands for best interest. You are supposed to be doing what's in the best interest for the stakeholders as a fiduciary. So we kind of see that as a leverage to request that they look at the structure of the appointment of the PERS board so there's not direct influence by the governor. The other part of the equation to determine if we have to pay more or less revolves around the returns of PERS. That gets into the divesting of certain things that we have no control over. So one of the questions that came up was how much was the management fee that's being charged to the PERS fund to run PERS? And one of the recommendations that we wanted to ask for, it's around 1%, was simply that if we're not going to have a say as a participant in PERS for our employees and our retirees, then we're going to ask the state of California to cover that management fee. And that's huge because the numbers that were just updated, the return was 6.75, and they run it on a baseline of 7. And if it went down, that means our cost goes up. Now, in 2 years, when it catches up, we've had a phenomenal year in the market. That might be 7.5, which means our amount goes down that we have to pay. But in a normal year, if we reached 2 years ago 6.75, if the state of California had simply covered out of the general fund the 1% management fee, wow, our returns would have been 7.75, and our amounts for our unfunded pension liability would have gone down. So these are the types of actions that we actually want to take to Sacramento to say, look, let's look at the appointment of the board. Let's look at covering the fees. And then finally, if you're not going to give us any option as far as what we're divesting from, and we're not going to do this in the best interest of our annuitants, that we feel like the state of California at the state level should cover the losses incurred because they're the ones that's in control. So instead of going down to Sacramento and saying, we got to take the fight to Sacramento with no ideas, these are viable options that we can take. Now, we're one small municipality. So if the council grants us the permission to craft this letter, and the letter will come back before the council, of course, so they know exactly what we're signing on for, then we would take that and hopefully form a coalition and get our regional partners here, Sutter County, Live Oak, Yuba County, Marysville, everything that's local here on board with us. We could take this to the League of California Cities, try to get some traction with this. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, if it's not dealing with a couple of hot topics, there's people in our state houses that do not want to hear any of this, and that's going to fall on deaf ears. This is why the second recommendation we have, because again, of what I do, I brought forward as a recommendation. If you remember at the beginning, I said there was a little reg called BI, best interest. We feel like a copy of this letter with everyone that signs on to it should go forward to the Securities and Exchange Commission and FINRA, who manage and govern investment policies and what goes on there, to where maybe if our leadership in the state will not listen to us, maybe they'll listen to someone in the federal government that actually regulates myself and everyone else that handles money. And that's the best idea that we could come out with for right now. The California rule got voted down, so there was no other option for us to pull out and go to 403Bs, 401Ks, anything like that, because it was upheld in the court. So this is at least some action. I wish we could do more, but at least it's something definitive that we can take to our state house and to the bodies in DC that oversee investments to try to get some change.
Very good. Really appreciate the commentary and your expertise, Dave. Thank you very much. Anybody from the public care to comment on that item? From up here?
Through the mayor. In looking at the recommendation and listening, Councilman Shaw and Mayor Harris, I appreciate the fact of all the work that you put into hosting the workshops and the meetings. I'm in support of the letter. I just, in the recommendation, it states here to prepare and sign the letter outlining. I would be more than happy to review the letter as we get to that point before the authorization of actually signing this letter. And possibly at the same time, if you're able to begin the conversation with the other regions, maybe a letter from the multiple region might be even carry a little bit more weight than just coming from us. So those are just, two of my thoughts. If we're going to look at this particular motion, I would like to amend that if we get there.
All right. Well, that makes complete sense. I know if it's at minimum, it will come from us, in which case I would sign that. But as Councilmember Shaw said, we will come back for approval for the entire council and be reaching out. If we have anybody who would like to join us, then we would definitely have another signature line on that page, if you will. So thank you for that. Did you have something, Manny? Sure.
I wonder if anybody on the council has ever read the original contract with PERS? I'm asking a question.
I believe I did when I got hired out to City of Yuba City 40 years ago, but I can't remember it at this time.
I was going to ask you for a good memory on that.
Yeah, they give us all a copy when we get hired on with the city. They give us a copy of that.
Is it
I couldn't tell you anything at this time, though. I'm sorry.
And that pertained to the overall conditions that were in there between the city and PERS, is that correct? Or was this just for the employee?
That would just be an employee.
Yeah. So what I'm asking is, has anybody on the board read the original contract between the city and PERS? I doubt it. I don't think I've asked this question before.
Okay, keep in mind this is comment time. Do you have a statement you'd like to make,
Yeah,
Phil?
the statement is that I would hope that the council will read the original contract and then come back and tell the public what's in it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. City Attorney, is that public information? I would think so. It's publicly accessible, so if you have the internet, you're more than welcome to knock yourself out.
You're passing the buck.
If you want to read it.
Yeah,
it's pretty long for us to come back and summarize it to you.
Their opinion as to what's in there. I can read it, but that doesn't make it a damn thing.
Through the mayor.
Okay. I'll tell you what's in it. It's a pretty broad stroke there.
Thank you.
Yeah, through the
All
mayor.
right, go ahead.
Mr. Trainer, just to address your concerns, the contract is well over 50 years old and has been amended probably 75 times. But as we write and craft the letter, we will reference any important sections, subsections of that contract, which in the current state, just my one council member's opinion, they probably got us over a barrel, just the way the contract was probably written and the way they've changed it over the years. So that's why we've got to come at it with a two-pronged approach.
Okay, I'll just say this. One of the reasons I bring this up is that I read the contract between Yuba County on the water agency back in 1959 and PG&E. That contract was 6 pages. 6 single pages, and very easy to read. So maybe the CalPERS contract may not be that extensive. Who knows what's in there? You may be paying money into somebody that doesn't even exist anymore. Thank you.
Thank you,
That
Phil.
was all.
Thank you very much. Anybody else care to comment? You sure? I see one in the corner of my eye. Rick Dias.
I want to thank the city for the 6 meetings we had, especially, I know Robin's not
Thank
here.
you
but
for coming.
She provided a lot of information, and there's a lot of information. I want to thank Phil Trainer for getting me involved in this whole mess many years ago. It's not an easy issue. One thing, we do want to take care of the employees. That's very clear. Every time I address the Sutter County supervisors, that's where we all got involved back then. The last comment I would make is if you're promising your employees a benefit that you can't pay for, that's immoral. And that's kind of where we've gotten. It's not the fault of this council. It's probably the fault of some other councils. There was a lot of misinformation, but I hope that when you're out and about, you do let your citizens know what a problem this is. You've got $79 million in unfunded liability, and you've got several plans. I'm just going to dwell on not the worst plan, the most serious problem you have, safety first for Yuba City. Firemen and policemen, a plan that was left 20 years ago, so it's almost fully mature. You've got 4 active members in that plan. You've got 107 retirees. And for that plan, 25 million unfunded. A plan that represents 4 people, 4 active people in it. So of the 79 million, 25 million is for a plan that only covers 4 people. And for those 4 people, Yuba City is going to be sending CalPERS this year $1.8 million for 4 people. Yeah. Put a fork in it, it's done. Not your fault, but you need to let people know how serious this is. And you need their help. And every citizen in this town and the county and surrounding areas should be involved. So it's not on your shoulders. It's on all of our shoulders. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dias. Anybody else? All right. So let's see here. Help me out. Where we leave off? We need a motion. Direction is to write the letter, prepare the letter, bring it forth to council, get approval on that letter, and then we'll reach out to other folks. Does that make sense? All right. I'll go ahead and make that motion then.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? None. Thank you very much. All right. So now we're going to go to